It is difficult to translate so many years of Portuguese language history into a few pages. It is difficult to find all necessary words, even more difficult to make a synthesis. The research carried out does not yet allow us to speak of conclusions, but it has opened up new dimensions for the analysis of the topic. One of the greatest challenges we face with this issue is precisely how Brazil's sociolinguistic reality is characterized, as well as its socio-historic formation. We cannot claim to understand the formation of Brazilian Portuguese language if not through a historical approach, with dynamics and processes undergone within the society. Therefore, examining the analysis of the language policies undertaken over these more than 500 years has proved to be of a great use in order to observe the matter more precisely. Brazilian Portuguese is phonetically, morphologically, syntactically, and lexically different from the Portuguese spoken in Portugal, even though it is still considered a Portuguese language, and this alone imposes a huge problem. Marcos Bagno assumes that Brazilian Portuguese is a complete and autonomous language and not a variant of European Portuguese. Thus, he assumes as valid, acceptable, and correct all linguistic usages that are already fully incorporated into the general Brazilian vernacular, spoken and written. It was no accident to have nicknamed this language as navigating language, a language that has its genesis in Latin, and that, after assimilating various Romance languages and dialects, embarked on a revolutionary voyage that went beyond the seven seas. This language pursued its history by sailing between the Atlantic, Indo-Atlantic, and even Pacific Oceans, a feat that still requires some effort to believe. 30-meter-long caravels, made of wood and sails, carried this language to the world's most extreme and unknown west. But even more extraordinary is the fact that this language is still spoken in the city of Macau, in the giant China. When it landed in Brazil, it met with a variety of almost 1,000 indigenous languages, where during the colonization process, the Tupi language, the most widely spoken along the Atlantic coast, merged with that of the colonists and missionaries. From Portuguese, it borrows the grammar and, from Tupi, the words, giving birth to the Lingua Geral, or Iengatu. And as it sailed through the rivers of Brazilian territory, it reached different regions, becoming the lingua franca of the colony for almost 150 years, limiting Portuguese to written documents and institutional settings only. This picture only experienced a change in the 18th century, when the metropolis imposed the use of Portuguese in the colony, now aware that a language is also the expression of a national identity. The Portuguese we speak today, with its variants from European Portuguese, it's not only due to indigenous languages, nor to African languages, not even to the Portuguese itself, but to the complex and arduous absorption and learning of Portuguese by slaves, freedmen, blacks, indigenous people, immigrants, illiterate people who often made up the majority of the population and who spread and influenced the ruling classes with their Portuguese learned in adverse situations. This was the Brazilian Portuguese that was consolidated, in contrast to the Portuguese that received so much attention from the elite in Brazil during the 19th and 20th centuries. A Portuguese with popular roots, despite all the efforts at linguistic unification made earlier and still today in Brazil. Language is about what we are. The Brazilian nation is rather hybrid, and this perhaps explains at least a significant part of our difference from Portugal. Language is a living being, which is born, transforms, and sometimes dies. Its developments are inexorable, despite all efforts and attempts to understand, determine, or even ban it. It's the language who makes us different from each other, and at the same time connects us as human beings. Sometimes it's also a powerful weapon to seal peace or cause chaos. However, the currents cannot be stopped, and it will continue to sail. But its future no longer involves the dangers such as strong tides, gales, or storms faced on the high seas, but rather those that today's challenges impose on us as we navigate the world of the web and social media.